So from the point of view being from the band's preparations, when did you know? When did the sort of scope and the scale of the tour start to materialize?
I think it was probably about a year, maybe more before that. And then they were waiting for all obviously the sort of venues itinerary or draft itinerary to be confirmed. And then I suppose it was probably the start of the year when they decided on the set list. And that meant, of course, we used to be a 5-piece and we're now a 4-piece brass section. So I had to tweak all the arrangements to work as a 4. So I had several months to do that, obviously. And then it was a question of finding the players that were available to do the tour. Again, I always sort of first point of call is to invite the original guys. So Ben Godfrey, John Truscott, Nick Stones, but unfortunately, as you would have noticed, it was only John Truscott that could make it, and only for a couple of nights, unfortunately. But as it turned out, Mike Poyser couldn't make those dates, so it all kind of worked in the end.
The brass ensemble is it's a key part of Big Big Train on record, yeah. But when you go out on the road, it's a very different experience to see the band play live with the brass ensemble.
Yeah, I kind of think it must be unique, especially to a prog rock band. I would have thought. I don't know many others that use a brass, and certainly not live either. So, and I know that, and it's a work of genius with Rob Aubrey, who manages to mix us in a way that just brings real weight and clarity. When we come in, it's not hidden away, or there's no disguising the fact that the brass have entered, I think. And he does it with such deftness. It's great. Whenever I've heard any sort of recordings from the concert, I thought, wow, it's surprising to us, because of course, we're in ear monitors, so we don't fully appreciate what's coming out the front. But when I have heard that, it sounds glorious, if I may say so.
Well, you and I have spoken a lot about Apollo in particular. That is the one for me, which live grabs my attention the most compared to how it sounds on the record. Because although it's there on the record, live it's visceral. It just
hits you right between the eyes, doesn't it? I think. I remember recording it and thought, oh, this is a jolly track and it sounds great, but playing it live, and adds a whole new dimension. And like you say, the uniqueness and the power, I'd like to think, of the brass really resonates, I think.
And that's at one end of the scale. But then on the other, you've got those moments like in Summoned by Bells.
Yeah.
And Nick brought this up. He made a really good point. He was talking about Jens's lighting and how much of an extra thing, the atmosphere that creates. Yeah. And I always remembered on the tour at the end of Summoned by Bells, where the lights kind of go low and it suddenly gets all kind of Parisian and jazz club.
Yeah.
And that, but that's something else that the brass ensemble brings.
Yeah, that's really special when we're left almost to our own devices. Well, I know at the end of Summoned by Bells, we kind of start just as a quartet, apart from, I think, just the odd ride cymbal. And then they come in, but it is a kind of, a jazz-esque type vibe at that point. And that's also nice to know. And I know that, Rob does such a great job to mix us so sympathetically, with everyone else. And again, that's a real poignant moment, I think, for us. It is in the song anyway, but, to know that we are playing pretty much just as a quartet for those however many bars it is.
How does, for when it comes to mixing, what is involved in doing that? Is there a lot of adjustment that you need to make for the natural sound of the instrument by itself, or?
No, not really. I just think it would be very easy to over-egg. For example, the tuba, obviously it's got that real bottom end to it. And I think Rob just gets the right EQ on everything. I don't know, but there's no missing any of the instruments. You can clearly hear each instrument and how it interweaves within the ensemble,
and not just having to mix you, but having to mix you for a different place every night.
Yeah, absolutely.
Some of those auditoriums were different. I mean, for example, from going from Aschaffenburg to the Mosel Saal in Stuttgart, that was quite a change of scene.
Yeah, I mean the Stuttgart concert would have graced any kind of solo classical performer that you can imagine with a full-on rock band and us. I mean, the interesting thing about Stuttgart was that when we went in the hall and we played, and there was this wonderful natural acoustic that gave us this beautiful natural reverb around the place. I think that was the only place that did that. The other places were like, as you say, like Aschaffenburg was a little low-ceilinged kind of club, wasn't it?
Yeah.
So he has those challenges as well.
I mean, the other guys have all said that on the behind the scenes, on the traveling and stuff, that it was one of the great things was that you all get on really well, and you can see that. I mean, you can see it in the body language on stage and after the show as well. Which must make it a lot easier when you're away for 3 weeks in a bus with not much space.
And I'd love to be able to give you an alternative or a different story to that, but it was very true. But in my experience, meeting musicians and working with musicians, the more accomplished they are, the more humble they are, and that's certainly true of all the guys in the band, especially on this tour. There was no ego of any kind really, and it was a very relaxed, very happy bus. Yeah, I was surprised. I thought, pretty weight, living in those sort of conditions every day, someone's going to snap at some point, but no one did. No one did.
Do you think that as well, that it's a bit, I know it's a bit of an obvious thing to say, but I mean, big train music is pretty hard, and there's 11 of you, and there's no, you're all carrying the songs together because no one's really just sat there waiting for their next. They're either doing something or about to do something. I've always wanted to ask. I don't think I ever did when we were talking after shows, but obviously from your side, being classically trained, and all of you guys in the brass ensemble, a lot of your performances will be with a conductor, and now you're playing this really hard stuff, and there is no conductor. What's that like? What is that like?
It's especially certain points of certain songs. I mean, I don't know if anyone would have seen this, but in Victorian Brickwork, when Nick Mott has the gorgeous trumpet solos, I actually used my little finger to conduct. It was behind a music stand, so I don't think that many people saw it. I mean, but I was just, because he's so used to a conductor, I was just counting out like that. So
did you see it? I didn't see that at all.
Without it, and he's got no conductor. He plays in the London Symphony Orchestra, London Philharmonic, various orchestras, and he played at the coronation of King Charles and the Queen's funeral. He was there, but he still wanted that comfort blanket of someone just conducting out the notes. Because when you're in a and the brass are at the back, of course, so you haven't got eye line with anyone, and so I think sometimes we feel a bit exposed, and for him at that point, it really helped. But the rest of the time in the songs, I mean, the brass are waiting and praying that they come in at the right point. I mean, that's half the game for us, because we're not involved. And sometimes I feel a bit guilty about not being involved more. But over time, people use brass to accentuate parts of songs. That it's not so often are they used to play throughout a song, like we did in the drums and brass thing. That doesn't happen so much. So part of our job is always to be waiting to come in. Now, in a classical environment, we would be counting bars rest, and but with this band, you'd be counting out like 1,000 bars rest and then come in. So we had to do on audio cues really. But anyway, I'm not saying we have it hard. We just have a different kind of concentration for that. But I generally lead the rest of them on where to come in, just to avoid any mishaps. But it is incredibly complex music. Yeah. Some of the hardest I've ever played, I think, especially with our conductor, because the time signatures. I know we had all this conversation. We'll go from 3 bars of 11 to a bar of 19, and then a 7, and then you've got to be counting. No, right, where's the first beat of the bar? Where's number 1? I don't know. Where are we? Yeah. So it's a challenge. Every gig is a challenge, but very rewarding as well.
And when it all comes together, I mean, I think for me, I'm a fan, right? So there's never a bad performance, but I think for me, 2 or 3 gigs in, maybe it was the Stockholm show, I just felt that night in particular gelled. I mean, but from your point of view, where you feel it gel, where you can kind of, if you are glancing around and sensing it, and can you sense it? And that must be exhilarating, because it is such a big it's a big musical enterprise, isn't it? With all of you playing.
Yeah. And it's as I say, sometimes it's a bit tricky being sat at the back, because you don't always see everyone. I mean, look across at Claire Lindley, and she's got the smile, a big smile, as we know, she's always smiling. So, but just to see that, it's relaxing, it's lovely to see, and it's relaxing. But I think you're right. After 2 or 3 gigs, I think the first gig, there's still little corners to round off and things. And I think even knowing that you can get through the gig, you've done it 2 or 3 times, that brings a confidence, and think, right, well, if we've done it 3 times now, then it's going to take something spectacular for it to go badly wrong. I think you're right. It did take a few gigs. When I think of the warm-up show at Tring, were you at that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I think at that was quite rough in comparison, and a strange place for Rob to mix as well, I think. But yes, I think you're right. Stockholm was kind of the turning point in many ways, actually. Well, not the turning point, because I hadn't been awful up to then, but there was a tangible sense of, relaxation or more of an easiness about the performance.
You were talking about coming together in Tring and how it was a little bit still, getting to know each other. With the brass ensemble, obviously, that well this time around, because like Danae was new and everything.
Yeah.
How do the others prepare? I mean, how much time do they get to, or is it, again, because it's a classical instrument, you kind of just rock up and play because that's kind of what you do?
Yeah, and they're all we're all performing with other various ensembles anyway. So I think from that perspective, it's not so much the playing of the instrument, but it's playing together and becoming a unit. We don't get an awful lot of time when we do it. We don't get together before we get together with the band, and then of course you're often just a small part of something a lot bigger. So what we normally do is just to play through things quickly between us to make sure everything works and everyone's reading it right. I mean, like I say, that was the first time I met Danae when she turned up at Tring. But I knew that Nick Stones had recommended her, and I know that he wouldn't he wouldn't have recommended anyone that wasn't up to it. In fact, he said she's an awful dep, and I said, why is that, Nick? He said, because she's really a good musician and she gets on with everyone. It's like, I'll never get it back again. It's the worst kind of dep. But so we get together and then we'll play through our little bits, and generally they're so good that they'll know when to back up, when to be a bit louder, when to play the notes a bit longer, a bit shorter. I mean, I suppose the thing we worked on the most was the drums and brass, because that was quite a challenge to play. I mean, I remember when Nick first sent it to me, and I said, "Are you sure? Are you sure you want to attempt this?" He said, "Yeah, let's go for it." So we did, and I thought that would take longer to get together. I mean, some nights went better than others, but it was great fun to play.
It was very funny. The first night when nobody had heard it before, there was that sense of, wait a minute, I know that.
Yeah. And I remember Nick saying, I said, because I didn't know that Yes tune. I forget the title of it now.
After the Sunrise.
Yeah, that's right. So I didn't know it. And I said, what's all that about, Nick? He said, listen to me, all the prog fans will love it when they hear brass playing that. I said, okay, well, I'll take your word for it. But yeah, he was right.
No, it wasn't. The thing was, it never got tired, because after I'd heard it once, so those of us who were doing several dates, then it was just fun watching everybody else. Yeah, go through that same kind of, and I know that. It's that. No, it really is.
Yeah, we used to get when we came out front, and some of the fans would say, "Was that Yes?" Yeah, it was. Yes. Like you've never heard it before.
They were always great fun moments, though, and like the Pinkies and the Rock, Nick Mott with his sexy trumpet and stuff. Or you could tell how much fun it was for you guys to be playing together.
Yeah, honestly, it's to play as part of a rock band, and it's such a fantastically musical, interesting, and complex kind of music. It's a rare treat. I mean, the combination of all those things and all those styles makes it a really interesting gig for us, and a unique one. I don't know, but there may be some, but I don't know of many prog rock bands that use a brass group.
I was thinking about, Chicago obviously had a kind of horn section, but normally when people talk about brass instruments in rock, they're talking about the horns.
Yes, there's
it's like the saxophone, and there isn't a saxophone. It is more this lovely. Like every time I hear the Transit of Venus Across the Sun, I am just like a 10-year-old kid in Lancashire again. It's that kind of colliery sound. It's so warm and that rich and deep.
That's what Greg always, that's what he says. That's what he envisaged. Transit of Venus Across the Sun. I mean, I remember working out what to play with it, because I think for that one, Greg just said, "Oh yes, we want some brass here at the beginning." So he totally left it up to me. And you try a few things, but when I got the final arrangement, when I knew it was just sounding, it just clicked, and it was a wonderful thing to think, yeah, this really works, and captures everything that I wanted it to. So I really enjoy playing that, because that's a real nice moment for us to shine, just as an ensemble.
Hearing you talk about how you assemble that particular track, is that commonly how it works with the brass arrangements, that you'll get like maybe a melody or as such, but then it'll be your job to figure out how it's going to come together as an ensemble piece with all the instruments?
Yeah, Greg gives me a lot of freedom actually with that, and normally he just say, look, from here to here in the song, I want it to feature brass. Come back at me, and then what I usually do is come back with a few ideas or a few variations of ideas, and I say to Greg, which one do you think suits best? And he'll choose, and then I'll finish it off from there. Dave Longdon was a lot more prescriptive. So he pretty much had the arrangement already in his head, you know, obviously recorded on the keyboards or something, but he would sort of say, you know, this is what I want. So it was really more a case of me transcribing it, really. I mean, like, you know, for example, the kind of fanfaric opening to Folklore, that was his arrangement. I just put it onto brass instruments, really. Alberto, for the new album, for the ones that I played on, yeah, he kind of was a bit more like Greg, so he kind of gave me the freedom just to do what I thought, and then I would write a little bit on my music notation software and say, this is the kind of thing I was thinking, are you happy with this? And generally they say yes, which is nice. So, you know, but it's interesting, you know, hearing it for the first time, we think, oh, well, on earth am I going to write for this that will fit? But then after about the fifth or sixth, I have to listen to it for a good few times to kind of get the whole vibe of the piece and think about, you know, what it's trying to say, both musically and lyrically, and then try and find something that fits, that's, you know, that complements it.
On Love Is the Light, there's some nice brass arrangements in there.
Oh yeah, that was a real labour of love to arrange for that. As soon as I heard it, I thought, oh wow, what a song this is going to be. And I couldn't wait to play it out live to see all the fans' reactions, because I think it's a terrific song, really. And again, you know, it was really nice to add what I think is quite a lush, you know, brass arrangement to it. And we really enjoyed playing that. Interestingly, it's only in Four to the Bar, one of the few Big Train songs that stays.
Really not.
But it's quite, you know, as you'll attest to, I'm sure, it's quite anthemic in certain places, and I thought you could just sort of see all the, you know, the mobile phone lights going at the end, and I'm glad it received the plaudits that I thought it deserved to. But yeah, great, a real labour of love writing for that one.
There's a great shot of you and Nick and Mike, and I think it's in Stuttgart, and it looks like you're kind of warming up in the corridor. It's kind of you're kind of spaced apart down this long corridor, and you're all three are very intent on what you're doing. And I just wondered what was going on.
Yes, I would imagine we're going through our various warm-up drills, if you like. So, you know, lip flexibilities, and you're kind of playing to the extremes of the instrument just to get your lips warmed up, because obviously, you know, it's a very fragile muscle, and you've got to warm it up properly each evening. So it's not, otherwise, you know, it's like any muscle, like running. If you run without a warm up, you're in danger of pulling a muscle. I always say, take the mickey out of you know, guitarists or pianists or whatever. Say, well, you just hit something and it makes a sound. We have to make the sound, and also, you know, choose the note to play, or, you know, the brass defense league. Probably all playing something completely different, but I'm sure Mike was playing as low as he could go. I was probably, somewhere in the middle, and Nick's probably doing his exercises, going up and down the scale, so you get used to that, playing low, then playing high, but you know, consistently making a good quality sound.
And so Dave Desmond on keyboards.
Yes, well, I always like to be, I'd rather be playing...
Talking about hitting things.
Yes, I'd rather be playing than not, you know, and in previous tours I've done a bit of auxiliary percussion. I'm always keen to be involved, and because, you know, I'm a music lover as well as a trombone player. But, you know, I just love to play other instruments. I'm not brilliant at other instruments, but I can get by. And sometimes you can feel like, you know, you're extra, you're an add-on, which we are, we accept that. But it's nice to, you know, for me, to be a bit more involved and feel a bit more part of the main band at times.
Because we were talking earlier on that, you know, about the warmth of the brass sound. and how it's arranged in certain songs. I mean, got this reputation for its English, a lot of its big classic numbers, this very kind of English kind of quality. And, around Europe, they're prog fans, but it seemed like that there wasn't really any barrier there in terms of the Englishness of the songs coming, the Swedish audience scratching their heads going, what's this about?
No, I think I know what you mean, but perhaps it only sounds traditionally English to the English or British audiences, and perhaps that kind of, like we say, the sort of colliery band type sound is not necessarily known as recognised as that
right
across Europe. Of course, they've all got pretty much all the countries we visited have all got their own tradition of brass players and brass playing, different styles. In fact, we did have some fun trying to make umpire versions of some of the songs, which was quite entertaining at times. But so I think hopefully there was just an appreciation for the general sound of the brass and the standard of playing. Hopefully, but it does bring a unique warmness. I think especially a well played tuba and really adds to the bottom end of everything, rather than it just being a bass guitar, which we always bass guitar and bass drum. To have a tuba adds another kind of layer, I think.
I think that's the thing. Sometimes with certain bands, if they do use that kind of instrumentation, it can be for they're almost like striving for a particular effect for just one song. Whereas with Big Train, it's like a stick of rock, isn't it? It's a strand to the music that goes right through, and you've obviously been part of it from the get go.
Yeah, I think with it and the use of the tuba in particular, whilst we're talking of that, often a tuba will just play the root of the chord or something. It will be going bom 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 bom, or just playing long notes. But the two guys that we had on the tour, John and Mike, are seriously good tuba players. They are. They're the top of their tree, really, and they can play anything from the lovely, warm, long notes, deep, long, low notes, to the, I suppose, the frivolity, whatever you want to call it, of drums and brass, and that's some fast playing. You often find tuba players struggle to play fast, but those boys could handle anything you throw at them, really. So we're very blessed to have them.
And then at the end of the tour, you did a little bit of marching band number as you came in from the back doors at Cadogan.
Well, I think all of us except Mike Poyser have been in a marching band, and even Mike plays in the odd band or umpire band where they've had to march about a bit. So for me that was going back to from my military days, and as I say, all of us apart from Mike have been in military bands. That was that's second nature. That it was a bit of fun. Yeah, it was a great bit of fun.
Oh, but immediately before that, there was that really amazing, I guess you could call it it was a tribute, wasn't it, really, to David and when you came in, it was a really beautiful way to just suddenly release all that emotion which had kind of been building up during those two numbers previous.
Yeah.
What was it like going back to Cadogan after 6 years, and obviously in a very different world to what anyone would have wished?
Yeah, I kept thinking of, a lot of people did, the last time we were here. And I remember, even in sound checks and rehearsals, sharing a joke with David and singing, and he was just the focal point of the band for so long. And it really did hit home, coming back to, we all know, it was some of the first gigs that we did. as a pretty much a fledgling, live outfit, if you like. And then we were going back, obviously now with Alberto, but it was both poignant and interesting to see how far the band had come since those Cadogan concerts. But for me, like to hear Leopards being performed for the first time was a wonderful moment. That's one of my favourite songs that in the band's sort of repertoire, and to hear that, and it was sung beautifully. I remember in the sound check actually when they were going through it, and you still expect to hear David singing it. Alberto did a fantastic job. That it's a beautiful song, but that was the first time I'd ever heard it performed without David singing it. So it was a kind of a spine tingling moment, actually. That
enjoyable as it is. I mean, over the course of playing all those days close together, I mean, does that mental burden, does it wear you?
We played hard and partied hard, especially the brass for some reason. But we enjoyed it. There's this real sense of it's both achievement and kind of elation. A lot of the times it was elation, to have got through a gig, and you get, you do get, you feed off the adrenaline, and I could have easily stayed up all night partying a lot of the time. I had to sort of kind of force myself to go to bed because it was such a nice feeling of I can relax. That's it's a wonderful feeling. It is, and I do feel very privileged to be a musician and play, particularly in this band.
I don't know. I think from the band's point of view as well, it's always been really nice to have that opportunity after the shows to sort of get to know you guys a bit and talk about in the moment what it was like. I mean, we're talking now like a month afterwards, and I know that we obviously got to know each other through the shows and stuff, but like for the people that only do come to one show, and that's the show they're going to, that's maybe the first show they've come to, is the only show they're going to go to this tour. I think it's just such a great thing that you do to give people that chance to have a little conversation, sign some autographs. I mean, we're going to go and see Taylor Swift next year. She's not going to be coming out for afterwards and saying hi to everybody. Do you know what I mean?
That's a hugely enjoyable part of the experience for me, certainly. Because I'm a people person, so I just like to get to, not in a I want adoration at all. It's just I like to know the people that like our music, and I think, well, we must have something in common if they like the stuff that we're putting out, and you do put your sort of heart and soul into it. And it's, I don't want to sound cheesy, but that's one of the wonderful things about music, is that you put a lot of your own emotion into it, and to see someone who enjoys that same feeling that the music brings as you had trying to create it is a nice thing. And it's nice to get to know the sort of person you are, and maybe what makes you like that sort of music. But to know that you've put your heart and soul into something and then someone else appreciates it is definitely one of the highlights for me.
At the end of the day, that's with this particular group as well, and the particular, I think the fan community is special, because actually for me, one of the really nice things about this tour was I got to know a lot more people on our side, if you like. I just got to know more people because we were all on Facebook more, and there were some people at more shows. I mean, and so that was really rewarding, because clearly it's music, that this particular music by this particular band just really stirs something in a way that is hard to articulate sometimes. Of all the tracks, I mean, it's the obvious one because it's the most famous and it's the one that people clamour after the most, but I've never really been that much of an East Coast Racer fan, to be absolutely honest, before this tour. On that album, The Permanent Way is the one that does it with me every time, and I like East Coast Racer, but now, I don't know, I've just got so much, I feel like I've got an extra appreciation of it that I never had before.
Yeah, I've always thought East Coast Racer, and to a lesser or greater extent, Victorian Brickwork, I just feel that presence with people. Funnily enough, I know we're wrapping up now, but so Nick Mott, obviously, who's played that beautiful trumpet solo, and he played it beautifully every night. And that's a tough ask for any trumpet player. So he was playing it, and now probably about halfway through the tour, I think we were talking with Greg one night, and I said, "Oh, Nick, yeah." I said, "Do you know the story of, what this is about?" And he said, "No, I don't." I said, "Greg, tell him." So Greg very matter-of-factly said, "Oh, yeah, so, and he told him the story about his father, wasn't it, that was basically on death's door, and getting lost, and then it was the Victorian brickwork of the funeral directors, and, made him think." And he said, "Get it now." And he said, and that, that almost brought him to tears the next time he played it, because it kind of all joined up for him.
Is it because it's kind of like a song about regret, isn't it? It's about not making the most of a relationship.
Yeah, and I think that just helped. Knowing that just helped him play it with more, authenticity, if you like, And it's funny how, again, the music draws that emotion from us, isn't it? And that's the thing that we kind of yearn for. It's a way to communicate, isn't it? It's a way of, everyone knows how to speak a language, but music speaks to us all, and that's the glorious thing about it. And when you, like I was saying before, to see or to meet fans of the music, that obviously they get that emotion. Greg and David are now in fact, the band are blessed with many, many songwriters, but I've always loved Greg's songs. I think he's got such a talent for pulling on all our emotions. But I always know when it's a Greg song, and I couldn't describe to you why I know it's a Greg song. I just do.
Well, I mean, with Victorian brickwork, because we were talking earlier about the how you arrange the things, but with that particular ending in the solo, is the solo kind of as Greg wrote it?
No, it's the I think he did it on cornet, but there's a guy called Rich Evans who was in the Coldstream Guards band,
right?
Like us. So he recorded on that first session, and we'd done all the bits that I wrote and arranged, and then Greg, I think it was Greg or Rob or both of them, said, "We've got an idea that we'd like you to improvise over this." And the only improvisation I've ever done is over a jazz thing, really. So this was a bit, I don't know how this is going to go. But maybe they only said it to Rich, who again wasn't really hadn't done it much anyway in improvisation. So he went into the studio and they just played around this, and he would just do anything that came into his head. And I think actually what happened is, I think it was Andy Poole kind of cut and spliced little sections or the best bits and put it together into a solo. Again, when they first said he's doing it live, I thought, oh my, well, I'm going to write that out, because that's. But anyway, now they've got it to read if they need it, and I think it's a mixture of. I think they learn it because we wanted to have the solo. Because I think when you were going to do it live, I said to Greg, "Do you want the trumpet player to just play what he feels?" And he said, No. We want to keep to the the original tune," which I get. I just wondered what trumpet players were going to be able to read it, and then and luckily we've had some great players that can read it, and then they just it's in their heads, and they're able to relax a bit and just put their heart and soul into it.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to sound dense and ignorant here, but I mean, compared to a classical piece, I mean, how hard is that then? That solo?
That is up there with some of the hardest trumpet parts, I think, you'd find in most classical playing. Really, is. I mean, I think it is that someone's asked me before, what sort of brass playing is it? When I've been sort of scouring to try and find players that might be available, they say, well, what sort of playing is it? Is it like like horn section. No, it's nothing like a horn section. Trust me. Well, there's little bit the bits that we did in the connection plan. Funnily enough, that we added in. I'd always heard those in my head, and they're probably the only thing that sounds like a horn section.
Right.
But the rest of it is like a brass quartet, stroke, a classical brass section of an orchestra.
Yeah.
So it's something between the two. But no, that particular solo is very challenging, and if you see it on paper, it's even more challenging. You think, how on earth am I going to play this? But yeah, when they break it down and get the feel of it, they forget the complexity of looking at the music and just play it from within there.
Does the fact that it is a kind of rock music piece just give you a little bit of extra freedom in that regard? Because in a way that you can't necessarily, I don't know. I'm just, but with classical stuff, it is the way it's written, and you can maybe speed it up, slow it down, but I don't know. There's something about rock music and playing that degree of difficulty within a rock song.
Yeah, and I think
allows you to go somewhere else as a player.
I think it's probably something to do with the general formality of a classical music setting, as compared with playing in a rock band, and you've got everything's louder.
Mm-hmm.
Well, not at that point, I suppose, or not when the trumpet starts. But I think again, having that really somber kind of feel when the trumpet starts in that, and then suddenly you get this powerful kick of the drum and the rest of the band coming in. And actually to play it over that is another one of the things that makes it challenging, because you want to naturally play louder than what
they do,
accompanying you, and you've got to be really disciplined not to play too loud and make it sound like a Maynard Ferguson kind of thing. You don't want it to be brash. It's still got to have that sobriety, if you like, as well. But so you've got to have the tonal quality of the notes that you're producing must remain within the feeling of the piece.
Gives me goosebumps hearing you talk about it, because I do, as an ending for a concert, that beautiful kind of descending motif that just loops around while Nick's doing his thing. And in the tour itself, near the end, I started to notice Maria, because what she would do when you guys are playing and when Nick's doing his solo, she would stand and she would just close her eyes and she would just sway. And she's in front of you, so maybe you can't necessarily see her face, but she would, and she did it. And once I noticed her do it, then I was watching out for it, because it was just, just because she's waiting to come in with that big solo, you know, and it just, and when finally, it's almost like you're waiting and waiting and waiting for something to just burst the free, and when she played,
no, I know, and I could tell, I couldn't see her facial expression, but I could tell when she was playing, and the way that she did move her body, which I think was really what a lot of the fans took on with Maria, is that you could just feel the sense of emotion that she was feeling too, and then she portrayed it in her solo, and that, like you say, that's from all that somber kind of colliery sounding brass trumpet playing, and then to be suddenly let free with that wonderful guitar solo that Dave Gregory wrote. You could just see how it moved her, couldn't you? I think that's the thing. And going back to what we were saying, that's what it's all about, is to convey an emotion that's not written or communicated verbally, isn't it? Or some of it is, I suppose, but those moments are just about music. But we all kind of get a sense of what they were trying to portray, I think, and that's it's part of the magic of the band. I think that that somehow whatever emotion is there when we create the song, that certainly gets across to the fans anyway.